Good morning, my dear Peter. The idea of this recording is to produce a document of a dialogue between us. And the word dialogue is a very special word for both of us. In order to introduce you to the people who in the future are going to watch on this dialogue, I would say, but not on my behalf, but on the behalf of great theologians in the United States, that they are considering you one of the great theologians here in the United States and throughout the world.
Yes.
They published a very special book, Theology Without Borders,
Yes.
in which they analyze the huge work, the huge production, theological production that you get in your life. In order to have a very clear understanding of words that we are going to use in our dialogue, how would you define the concept of dialogue?
First of all, thank you very much. I will call you Rabbi, so allow me to do that, just Rabbi, okay? I am a Vietnamese. I came to the United States in 1975 after the war, the Vietnam War. So it's a long, long time now, 45, almost 50 years from now. I am now currently teaching at Georgetown University. I hold the chair of Ignacio Ellacuría, chair of Catholic Social Thought. So that's briefly about me. Thank you very much for your kind words about the new book, the second fresh shift that I received, Theology of Borders. Now let me come to your question. What do you mean by dialogue? Now, if you go by etymology, you know that is the Greek term dialogos, speaking through. Now, it's very important to realize that the word dialogos often, but not always, often refer to a kind of conversation, like we are doing now, or a conversation on a topic, any topic. And in dialogue, we only want to listen first to what you are going to say, Rabbi, and then in the conversation, we can grow in our understanding. Sometimes you correct my understanding, sometimes correct yours. But the point is not defending one point of view, but rather grow in a mutual understanding and understanding of the subject matter. Okay, that's number one. Number two for me is very important to realize that the purpose, the main part of dialogue is not an intellectual exchange. It is important, like you and I are doing now, is an intellectual exchange. But the Asian bishops, we call it the Federation of Asian Bishop Conference, distinguish 4 levels of dialogue. And we'll see Pope Francis will be the champion of this kind of dialogue. The first one, dialogue, is share life, living together. You and Pope Francis live together in Argentina, Buenos Aires, and it is your common life. You share friendship, you live together, eat the same food, speak the same language, and care for the same person. That is the most important part of the dialogue. It is not conversation. It is common life, shared life, friendship. Pope Francis talks so often about friendship. Without friendship, there's no dialogue, right? He went to Bahrain, and that's part of it, talking about friendship. Without friendship, dialogue is empty. It's just an abstract exercise. Second meaning, aspect of dialogue is working together. Collaboration for the common good. It's not for your religion, it's not for my religion, but for the common good. the common good of the people, what makes them human. So Pope Francis talks so much about common work with Muslims, with other Jews and Muslims. He talks about working together for the common good, and especially today for the ecology. And we know that he's focused on ecology. His latest encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, he talks about this friendship, right? This common humanity. Fratelli Tutti, a word that he took from St. Francis. The third is precisely what we're doing, theological conversation. We do very well. We write books, we attend conferences. You and I meet together at Georgetown, we discuss. The fourth one, it's the most difficult one, is sharing spiritual experiences. That goes beyond living together. This goes beyond working together. It should be beyond thinking together. It's sharing religious experience. So, for example, you are a Jew, I am a Christian. Can we share our spiritual experiences of God together? And that is what is really transform our being. So though this is the answer, a rather long answer to your question, what is dialogue? And I think Pope Francis represents all these four aspects of dialogue extremely, extremely well.
Yeah, I would add one comment to your good explanation, your very precise explanation. I would add the word commitment.
Commitment, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Necessarily, the dialogue must attach us to a commitment in order to resolve or to begin to give an answer to the great problems that we are suffering. You know, on certain opportunity, I commented to Pope Francis about certain anti-Semitic expression in Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately after he received my letter, he called me and he demonstrated to me very clearly that as Pope, that he is ready to help and to extend a helping hand in order to stop all kind of anti-Semitic expressions in Argentina. And the last anecdote that the brand fresh anecdote that I can tell you from Pope Francis is that after coming back from Bahrain, I wrote to him that I came with a good feeling from Bahrain, happy, because the great Imam from Al-Azhar, in his speech, said something very relevant for me, very important. He invited all the Muslim denominations to sit in dialogue around the table. This reveals a commitment. The dialogue, it's very good, of course, that both of us are going to understand and to find an empathy one towards the other. But what are we going to do with this empathy, with this dialogue? What are we going to do in order to improve life, human lives, the life on our planet? So a couple minutes ago, I received this answer, and he wrote to me, I came also very happy from Bahrain, because the Muslim Catholic dialogue made Bahrain a step ahead. Now, we are living in a very difficult world. A world in which the very polarized positions, political positions, human positions, appeared again. The world is not walking on the golden middle way, but societies throughout the world. In Latin America, Europe, you can see, for instance, in Italy and other parts, that very far right parties came to power in polarized societies, not to say United States. How can we, as religious leaders, contribute in order to install the dialogue in our society?
Yeah, Rabbi, you are absolutely right about the polarization we live in today in the United States and throughout the world. In the last midterm election, last Tuesday, we see something like that. But to answer your question, how can religious people and religious leaders contribute to the breaking of this polarization, I have several ideas, and I'm sure it's nothing new to you, but I like to speak to the audience. The first thing I would say is to appeal to the best of our religious traditions. What constitutes Judaism, what constitutes Christianity, what constitutes Islam and any other religions? What is the best tradition in these religions? We all know that these religions, or better still, these religious followers have their defects. We all know that. The war in the past, particularly the Holocaust, and many other show that human beings, even religious people, can commit atrocities. But as religious people, we have to go to the best things, the best teachings, and the best examples of people who have done so much for the good of society. Judaism can appeal to many, many heroes and great people. Christianity can appeal to all kinds of saints and all that. And Islam can do the same. Why don't we go to these icons of holiness, these models that we can? So number one, appeal to the best things that each religion, in spite of their defects and their bad history, can provide to us. Number one. Number two, I would say that we create a common ground among believers, unbelievers, between followers of one religion and another. We have to create a common ground. How do we do that? We stop demonizing the other. We look at the other like the bad one. We are the good one and you are the bad one because you don't happen to be part of my religious tradition. So we tend to demonize them. We look at them as the evil. We call the Satan, or so many terms that we use to describe my opponent, those who think differently, those who believe differently, those who act differently, we demonize them. So in order to create this common ground, we must stop our language of demonizing. We have to think of the other not as an enemies, but as friends working. And the third thing I would suggest, we start small, little projects. Sometimes we think of globally. Yes, it is important to think of globally, right? International, global. But in a small church, you and Pope Francis, when he was still Archbishop of Buenos Aires, you start a very small conversation between the two of you. You do not just simply start from globally, but you start from Buenos Aires, what you as a rabbi and as Francis Bergoglio can do for the people. Start small. And from there, we create communities, small communities of understanding. So those are the three things I would say. That first, appeal to the best things of your religious tradition. Second, we have to stop demonizing the other, considering the other as Satan or devil or everything. And third, starting with small projects that you have done.
In 2017, appeared your book, The Joy of Religious Pluralism, a personal journey. Putting aside the personal experience at this moment, what means the joy of religion, of religious pluralism?
Well, yeah, I take the title from Pope Francis. The joy of the gospel, the joy of love, and many. I think that's what Pope Francis contributed to the dialogue. He brings joy. You know, it's not fear, it's not hatred, but joy. Joy makes us open our heart and our mind and our attitude to others. We share the joy, whatever it is that we find joyful and happy. So that's what the title, I'm sorry to say, I steal from Pope Francis, so many of his encyclical. But what do you mean by joy? What I mean by the joy of religious pluralism? I mean this. I regarded religious diversity between Jews and Christians, between Jew, Christian, and Muslim America, not as a problem to be solved. You know, we get together, we have to solve the problem of religious pluralism. That's not how I see. Religious pluralism is a blessing. It's God's blessing. We, like the Muslim says, God has 99 names, right? And the richness of the Jewish tradition is speaking about God, names of God, so many. And the Christians also have names of God. And to see religious pluralism not as a divider, not as an obstacle, not as something to fight against, but as a blessing, a joy to be together. It's a joy to be so different and not the same. The same is so monotonous. If everyone in the world, everyone are Christian, we lose the richness of Judaism, of Islam, of Hinduism, of Buddhism. So to see religious diversity, religious pluralism, not as something we fight against, not as something we have to conquer by our own, theology, but as a blessing that we receive with joy so we can look at others. So that's what I mean primarily. It's religious diversity is a blessing and not a curse.
I many times in these days ask myself what we as religious people can do in order to stop conflicts in the world. What occurs in Ukraine, what is going on in the Sahel area, or sub-Saharan area, in which I know that many religious people told me that their word is very important and very considered. So, so why, if this is the opinion among the religious leaders in the Sahel, where there are a lot of conflicts, for our great sorrow, and religion plays also a great role in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Yeah. What can we do? Yeah. What can we contribute in order to calm a little bit or to restrain a little bit these terrible dramas? Yeah.
Well, you mentioned so many very difficult issues and so forth. And that brings me up to one more important idea I would like to share, that we cannot isolate, separate religion from all the aspects of human life. Even though you are not a believer, you still have to recognize that in human culture, religion has played an important role. So even a political military problem cannot be solved simply on political and military terms. Now, I know that generals talk in terms of military terms, president talk in terms of politics, but we have a voice because religion is strictly, intrinsically, integrally involved in all aspects of human life. And that's where we propose our contribution. We offer our contribution, not as the solution, but as one aspect of the so many complex aspects of a reality of human life. So the war in Ukraine, the role of the Orthodox Church is indispensable, absolutely indispensable. The Orthodox Church in Russia and Orthodox Church in Constantinople. If the two branches of the Russian Orthodoxy cannot come together, what hope do we have that Russia and Ukraine come together? And we think again on the Reformation in the 16th century, if Catholics and so-called Protestants cannot agree, how can we bring peace to Europe? The same thing today. So that's what I think for Pope Francis, I find so great, Pope Francis. Even in the ecological issues, we think of it economically, we think of it scientifically, we think of it so many different. But he says in the encyclical Laudato Si, the ecological problem is not simply technological problem, the so-called technological paradigm he talks about, but it's also a religious and cultural problem. And so he used a famous expression, integral ecology, that all aspects, ecology of the human person, ecology of the society, ecology of the culture, he talked about these and bring together. So I think that we have to reclaim the voice of faith, of religious traditions to bring to the table. You know, we should be ashamed of this is what we believe. And so we bring a kind of contribution. I like to mention the work of your friend, my friend, Dr. John Borelli. Dr. John Borelli, we all the assistant specialist to the president at Georgetown, Jacques Joya. He emphasized strongly the ecumenical dimension and interreligious dimension. You cannot separate. You cannot just say Christian by themselves, and then you have the interreligious. So I would like to highlight the great work of our friend, Dr. John Borelli, on this aspect to answer your question, that you bring the different aspects, the interreligious dialogue and the ecumenical dialogue together. Because if we have no unity among the churches, ecumenical dialogue, we cannot hope to bring a dialogue, interreligious dialogue.
All my life, I understood that probably the most important element in Hebrew Bible is the dialogue. Mm-hmm. It's dialogue, because to the only one creature that God come in dialogue is with human being. Mm-hmm. And especially after the human being committed a transgression, a sin. God didn't leave him alone. Mm-hmm. Human being didn't fulfill my commandment. He ate from the prohibited fruit, and he came with him in dialogue. Mm-hmm. Where are you? In Hebrew, Ayeka. God's question.
Yeah.
Where are you?
I am glad you asked this question, because I am teaching now a course, Death and the Afterlife, to the undergraduate at Georgetown. And I discuss in one class, chapter 3 of Book of Genesis that you mentioned. And I tell them that the root of the fall is the lie, the big lie. The big lie that comes from the snake, so-called the snake, the tempter. Did God forbid you to eat all the fruit? No, he didn't. He didn't eat it, right? That beginning of all is the lie, the big lie. The lie that is the beginning of all things that happened to bad happened. And then the second lie is from Eve. He said, no. God didn't forbid us to eat all the fruit, but only one, the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And she adds, we should even look at it. We should even touch it. We couldn't even, God never said that. But that was the lie. So there are two lies that started, and then the fruit. And then when you eat the fruit, what happened? They realized that they were naked. God came down, talked to them, said, where are you? Where are you? Oh, we are naked together. Who teach you that you are naked? Who told you that? The loss of innocence, the loss of this friendship between the first couple, the first human beings, and the loss of friendship with the universe, with the cosmos, with the reality of the garden. They had to expel from the garden. So you see then your question is this, is the sin, you mentioned sin. And I said, I was argue that at the root of this is the big lie. And how this is so appropriate for the United States at the present moment. It's the big lie. Whatever it is, it's a big lie. So that we can no longer trust each other because we walk on the big lie.
I agree absolutely with your words, with your concepts. Evil is constructed on big lies. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We can give more examples about the lies that use the snake, because the snake at certain moments said, and God forbid you to touch the tree. Sure. And it wasn't so. God didn't forbid to touch. And they touched the tree, and our rabbis explained that the snake continues saying, as you touched, and nothing occurred. So eat from the fruit. And it's very interesting that according to our sages, the sages of the Talmud, the Midrash, they understood that this fruit was a simple fruit. not just an apple, but they discuss which kind of, but a fruit.
Yeah.
And when they understood that they are naked, one of the explanations is that they had only one commitment to fulfill, only one precept, and they broke it.
Yeah.
So they felt naked.
Yeah.
They felt they felt that they try from one side on our exegesis. They explain that this has to do with sexuality, but others no. The only purpose of the tree was to put a limit to human being. Why? In order to have in mind all the time that there is a God in heaven.
Yes.
That there is a limit. You are not God. You are not God. What about, how do you see the development and the present situation of the Jewish Catholic dialogue?
I am glad you asked that question, because I have been engaged in the dialogue between Catholic and Jew dialogue, not so much general Christian, but Catholic. And here I would say that of all interreligious dialogue, the Catholic-Jew dialogue is the most developed for many reasons. For one reason, that the Catholic Church has so many popes, starting from Pope John Paul II, Saint John Paul II, continued through Pope Benedict, and now with Pope Francis. A special attention to the position of the Jews, and thanks to this, we have now rejected the so-called supersessionist theory. Just a word to explain what you mean by that. We, in the past, especially Catholics, think that the Catholic Church of Christianity replaced Judaism because we fulfill the promises. And so now we think that Judaism has no longer a role to play in the history of salvation of the world. Vatican II again, but Pope John Paul II, and then now Pope Francis has explicitly rejected this supersessionist theory, so that as the Apostle Paul says in the letter to the Romans, chapter 11, the promises of God remains. The Jews remain the people of God. So their relevance, their importance to the history of the world remains. So this is something that we have really, really affirmed strongly as a beginning of our dialogue. The second thing is we emphasize so strongly now the Jewishness of Jesus. Before we speak of Jesus as a Son of God, made flesh, or the Word of God, we speak Jesus as the Jew. He was a Jew and a very devout Jew. He didn't come to found a new religion. He simply tried to the true identity of Jews, the Jewish faith. So we cannot understand who Jesus is unless you remember that he was a Jew in the first place. And so there is now a new Christology, the Jewish Jesus Christology. In last September, there was a big conference in St. Joseph called in Philadelphia. Philip Cunningham, perhaps you also know, you were there, of course. And then they have this wonderful conference on the Jewishness of Jesus, the whole conference. How do we rethink Jesus in the context of his Jewishness? And of course, Mary, the Jewish, and his first disciples were all Jews. How can Christians understand itself without placing itself in the context of Judaism. So no supersessionism. Second, no no Christology without the Jewishness of Jesus. And the third one is we cannot do today theology, Christian theology, without remembering the Holocaust. The Holocaust has totally changed the way we do Christian theology. As because if we continue to do John Baptist Metz, a German theologian, he died several years ago. He said, Christian theology can no longer be done without the Holocaust in the background. So it reminds us of our Christian responsibility in the Holocaust. And we have to rethink our concept of God, of Jesus, of the church, and of Christian mission without going through. So today, I for one, not every theologian would, I for one said, we do not have mission to the Jews. The Jews are already in a covenant with God. We do not have confidence. We do not convert Jews. They are with God already. They are our ancestors in the faith. So all these things, as you ask me, what this Catholic Jewish dialogue has really radically changed the way we understand God, the scripture. That's why when we Christians use the word Old Testament, New Testament, we are very used to it. But you know, when you say something old, it's superseded. You don't need it. So go new. New is better. That's particular for America. Everything has to be new. And so we have to be very careful using this expression, Old Testament, New Testament, even though it is so traditional, but we must be aware of its possible implication.
Because that always when I speak about our Bible, I call that the Hebrew Bible, Hebrew scriptures.
Yeah.
And the New Testament, okay, New Testament, but ours is not old.
Oh,
And new is new. It's new in time because it appeared afterwards.
Yeah.
And I have not, maybe I have not another name. Maybe that we have to coin another expression. Or to maintain, because according to the tradition, to the Christian tradition, it's New Testament, referring to an expression of Jeremiah in chapter 31. Okay, it could be new in time, but our testament, this is a valid for us. This is true for us.
Okay.
It's very interesting when you said about the Shoah, that this must be part of the theology, of the new theology in Catholicism. This reminds me that when we talk in our conversations preparing the book that was published on Heaven and Earth, one of the moments that shocked me at most was when we analyzed the Shoah. And when the then Archbishop of Buenos Aires told me that, and so appears in the book, the Holocaust was the Jewish Holocaust was not the only one Holocaust during the 20th century. It was an Armenian Holocaust, but the Shoah was unique. The Shoah was unique. But in the Shoah, the Nazis tried to erase the presence of the God of the Bible in our reality, from our reality. And so we emphasized in such a way what occurred with the Shoah that I felt, oh, that I as a Jew can maintain such a position.
Yeah.
But here I'm hearing from a priest what I am feeling as a Jew, that this was a horrible crime and unique in what occurred, in the way that occurred, because the Nazis built up factories to kill people day after day, hour after hour. My dear Father Peter, professor, friend, overall friend, thank you so much for this moment.
Thank you.
That enriched me so much, and that I hope that will enrich also many others that will listen to us through this new technology.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Before I end, I'd like to add one more thing, just so. The anti-Judaism currently is not so much explicit, but it's very implicit in the Catholic liturgy, in the Catholic catechism and so forth. So we continue to speak of replacement and so forth. Now, our friend Mary Boyce and John Polikowski, the two great theologians, have insisted it's so important to pay attention to preaching, especially on Holy Friday. All the liturgy, the ceremony, and the preaching, and the prayers, they're still there. They are the anti-Judaic sentiments, ideas, they're still there, even though officially we have renounced them, but at the popular level of preaching, homiletics, catechetics, liturgy, and worship. So I hope what we have done today contribute a little bit to the removal of this anti-Judaism in the Catholic tradition. You asked me the Catholic, I would say that that's still there. All right, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks, my dear friend.
Yeah. Bye-bye.